Hi, welcome back to We Are Wool People. My name's Aosa, and on this channel I talk about my knitting. I share my current whips and my plans for future knits and crochet, and I talk about yarn and I talk about patterns, and I share a little bits about my life as a knitter in Australia. If that sounds like something you'd like to get on board with, then please like and subscribe to this channel, and without further ado, let's get into it. Before I get started, I'd just like to ask a favour for any of my US viewers. My husband and I would like to support the victims of the LA wildfires, and we really don't know what would be a good charity or a good community funded support organisation to donate to. So I wonder if I could ask you guys a favour. If any of you do have a recommendation for what a good charity or a good way of supporting the people in LA would be, would you leave a comment in the comment box and let me know so that we can research, because I don't even know where to go to even start, and I know that there must be so many different ways to support, but yeah, if anyone's got any opinions on that or any inside knowledge into what would be a good charity to support, if you could let me know, I'd really appreciate that. Thanks very much. Anyway, enough of that, on to the knitting. Well, it feels like forever since we've had a good old-fashioned catch-up with whips, and luckily I have got quite a few cast-ons. So I've got lots to share with you today, and a lot of it is quite fresh. So there's some brand new things that you've never seen before and a few carryovers from last year. I've got one acquisition that is not yarn related, but it is knitting related, and I've got a weird thing to share with you that happens to be a coincidence with something that Nora from aka Nora Knits did as well, which I think is quite funny. She shared it in her podcast on Saturday, and I was like, oh, I did that too, and I'm left with exactly the same situation that she has. Anyway, I'll show you that at the end. But right now what I've got is I have 4 new projects and 3 brought forward projects, and I'm going to start with the one that is the most fun. I cast this on, let me check my little book, the 13th of January. What's today? 17th. This is, I'm showing you the wrong side, this is the Stella, my beginning of the Stella Quilt Cushion by Laura Penrose. Isn't it gorgeous? The project comes as a cushion pattern and a blanket pattern, and if you're here, you've seen it because it was all over the internet last year. And I actually think this pattern might be a little bit older than that, might have come from 2023. It's absolutely stunning pattern, and I've loved it since the day I saw it. I will admit that I did think to myself when I saw it that she hadn't really invented anything new, and in fact she, you know, I did have my suspicions that what she was doing was just probably, you know, almost kind of not ripping off, but almost like just sort of copying some of the other quilt square projects that are out there and some of the other quilt square patterns that are available for knitting, because it's certainly not something that Laura Penrose invented. But you know what, I was 100% wrong, because this pattern, the construction of these individual little mitered squares is absolutely genius. And I've never seen, I've knitted some mitered squares over the years, right? But I've never knitted a mitered square using the kind of construction method that she has designed for this particular pattern. And although I think that her pattern writing style is probably a little bit chatty for my liking. I also can really see the amount of work that she has put into designing this pattern. It is a lot of fun. It's very, very, very potato chippy. I can easily sit down and knit 4 of those squares, so 1 row of the motif, in one sitting and really not want to get up and do anything else. I'm really, really enjoying this knit. The mitered squares are made with a combination of increasing and decreasing. There are short rows, there are various pickup methods, and each square corresponds to a different method of mitered square technique, and the pattern explains each method absolutely beautifully. I'm really enjoying this knit. And look, it's just so cute. I'm going to be finished this very soon, and I am really looking forward to putting this on one of my cushions. It's actually the perfect size for the cushions that I have on my sofa already, which, that was a good coincidence, wasn't it? Although the only thing I will say is that when I finish the quilt motif, which is the star pattern, I still have to knit the back of the cushion, and that probably won't be as much fun as knitting these little individual motifs. I am knitting this one in black wattle yarn sweet pea, which is a merino, alpaca and silk blend. It's a single construction yarn. I'm holding it double, and I'm using a colour called In Lieu and a mini fade set that I bought last year when I visited Blackwattle the same weekend as the Australian Yarn Show and in Canberra, and it is the colourway called Romance, I think. Yeah, so it's a romance set. So then we have whip number 1, new cast on for 2025 number 1, the Laura Penrose Stella quilt cushion. And this pattern actually is part of my Make 9 from Stash projects for 2025. So that whip number 1, Laura Penrose. Whip number 2. You might remember last year that I mentioned that I wanted to make a salty day sweater. I wanted a textured, loose, summery kind of sweater, and I really liked the Kutavakika Salty Days. And I knew at the time that I was going to make this pattern in this yarn, which I've shared with you before as well. It's like entirely unsuitable practically for the pattern. But I wanted to make it work because I really wanted a drapey summer yarn in this kind of throw over beachy sort of garment. And I think that I've achieved that, even though there's been quite a bit of finagling around to try and get it to work. So here is what it looks like so far. So I have knitted the back panel and the shoulders, and I have joined under the arms and knitted one set of the cable motif and then started again on the diamond pattern. And at that point I realised that I had a snafu, because that's all the yarn I've got left, and if I were to knit the garment the way that it was designed, I need to knit almost a whole sleeve, another whole sleeve, and a good 15 centimetres more on the bottom of this jumper out of less than one ball of yarn. And that is not going to happen. I did just notice earlier that I do have the swatch, so I'll be dipping into that in order to finish this project. But this yarn is discontinued, so I can't get any more, and I've looked online and I've begged in the Ravelry Australian Knitters desperately seeking chat with no response, and I've looked online and this colour is impossible to get. I do think I might have seen one ball of it on Etsy, and I don't even think it was this colour, and it was like $56 for one ball. This yarn, when I bought it in Spotlight, was $4. So obviously it's rare and possibly in demand. Have you got any of it? Anyone from Australia got any Nuboo, Lion brand Nuboo in the colour blush rose? If you do, please send me an email at knitabulous@gmail.com and I'll buy it from you. We'll do a deal, because I really could do with another couple of balls of this. But if I don't get them, here's my plan. I'm going to leave this sleeve as a really short cap sleeve and cast it off. I'm then going to mirror the tiny little short cap sleeve on the other side. So I've got two matching sleeves, which is what you want. I'm then going to do the neck trim. Probably just an I-cord bind off or a very, very short amount of rib. I will then go back and get as much length out of it as I can. I will probably, well, I'll have to truncate some of the motifs to make it work. And fingers crossed, I will get something that is more like a Salty Days top than a long sleeve Salty Days sweater, because actually the colour and the style of it, I do really like it, and I'm really enjoying the drape of this fabric. I am knitting this entirely off gauge on a 4mm needle, and check my little book, because I did say in 2025 I wanted to be better with recording what my projects, and so far so good. The pattern gauge for this is 17 stitches and 24 rows in the 3x1 rib pattern. My gauge on the 4mm needle is 24 stitches, and the row gauge is nothing like it. So mine is actually 30% smaller than Kudavakika's gauge. So I'm just knitting a larger size to compensate for that. However, it is still, and the jumper itself is actually really, really designed with a lot of positive ease. This actually still has a fair bit of positive ease, and it's quite weighty given that the yarn is 100% lyocell. It's awful yarn, I've said this many times. It splits and it's really, really slippery, and it hurts your hands like mad, but it's really lovely fabric. I really enjoyed it, working with it when I made Sari Nordland's Rosalind top with it last year. So I'm happy to be working with it again, kind of. I don't really know why I thought it was going to be enough yarn. I knew I only had 4 balls of it when I cast on. Does that happen to you? Do sometimes you lose all sense of reason just at the last minute? I should know to work out. One of the questions when you are, before you cast something on, is do I have enough yarn? I don't know why I don't ask myself that sometimes. Anyway, that's going to be all right, because I think this is really cute. I absolutely love this colour. I think it's really sweet. Kudavakika Salty Days sweater, made entirely in a lyocell yarn, completely off gauge. I'm about to run out of yarn. If you've got some, please email me and I'll buy it from you. But otherwise, I'm just going to have to make this work. This is whip number 2. The weather today is bitter cold and blustery and windy and absolutely horrible. Nothing like it should be in the middle of January in summer in Australia. And I'm coming to you today from my ordinary home. I flew back from Queensland earlier in the week, and I've only got 1 week of my long service leave left, and then I'm going to return to work part-time. So I'm going to be in and out next year, or this year rather, 2025, from Queensland and here, but I'll still be able to record my podcasts from my little spot. So I'm very happy about that. But the blustery day, that's what I was trying to get at. The blustery day. Today's a cold and blustery day, and it'd be just the perfect day for me to wear my Manon jacket. had I finished it. But I haven't finished it because I've only just cast it on. Here it is. This is the Manon jacket by Moreca Knits. It is, I'm knitting it in a boucle yarn. I'm knitting it in, it's actually Ashford Yarns Boucle Merino, held double with a strand of Holstgarn Titicaca, which is 100% alpaca lace weight yarn, held together to give me this really, really teddy bear-like, soft, fluffy boucle textured yarn. The pattern is actually knit in double moss stitch. Maybe it's just moss stitch. This pattern is quite difficult because you start at the back neck and there are quite a few short rows to raise the back neck and to make a kind of, the shape is, it's a cross and it's up and it's like a little archway. That's the shape, and the sides of the arches are going to be the shoulder seams, and then the top of the arch, if you like, it's not really rounded, but the top of the arch is across the neck, and then the sides of the shoulder seams that come back that are slightly, it's the European tailoring, they're slightly angled behind the actual tip of the shoulder, and then you pick up on each side and come forward, and then eventually bring it all together under the arm. But there's a lot of short rows, and in the moss stitch pattern, it's really quite technical to do those short rows and maintain the moss stitch pattern throughout the first couple of rows of the design. And when you cast on, you have to be really careful that you don't just set up your moss stitch pattern to start with, because every fourth stitch or whatever, you're duplicating the previous knit or the previous purl, so that when you do the short row, you can then eventually absorb it into the pattern, if that makes any sense. It would if you were knitting this top. So I have struggled with that a little bit. I've had to do it 3 times, but I do find that I have to start almost all my projects 3 times, and I don't know why. But I'm there now. I've done my back short rows, I've finished the short rows, I'm coming down the fronts, and actually I said earlier that it was the European tailoring with the seam that is on the shoulder down the back, but I actually think that I'm about to also make some increases for the sleeves. So I think that the construction is sort of, it's either a contiguous sleeve construction or it's a compound raglan. I'm not really sure yet, but I'll let you know as I go further along. I think it could be contiguous, which actually makes me wonder. I'll tell you something about contiguous knitting. The contiguous shoulder and sleeve shaping was actually invented by an Australian designer who, I remember when it was all over Ravelry when it was new, which was quite a few years ago now. And when you look at it on Ravelry, she does actually ask that the construction method is acknowledged when designers use it to design their patterns. And I think it's really funny because none of the Scandinavian designers ever acknowledge that Susie Myers was the inventor of the contiguous construction. And I don't know if it's because, you know, so much time has passed now and nothing new in knitting or whatever. But I'll share on the screen the Ravelry page for the contiguous knitting, the contiguous construction method. And I mean, I'm assuming that Susie Myers invented it because she claims to have invented it, and it was on Ravelry and she's asked people to acknowledge her when they design it. And in the beginning, when the contiguous patterns by Anchor Strict and Howie Locatelli and people like that, when they were starting to design contiguous patterns, contiguous sleeve design patterns, they did used to acknowledge her. But I guarantee that Petite Knit and Moreca Knit, they don't acknowledge it. And I wonder why. Food for thought there. I'm not actually 100% sure this is contiguous, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'll let you know next week. I am using a 3mm needle. The pattern gauge is 20 stitches on 3.5. I'm getting pattern gauge roughly on the 3mm needle, so I've had to go down a needle size. And I'm knitting, I'm not sure which size. I think I'm knitting the 3rd size up. So far so good. I'll just show you up close. I was going to show you the swatch, but I did the swatch in double moss stitch actually. The beautiful colour on this and the lovely fluffy teddy bear texture, this is a really exciting knit. It's really enjoyable and soft to actually work on, and I can't wait to have this little boxy Chanel style jacket with a little pocket and some gold buttons on it. I found some really nice gold buttons the other day, so hopefully they'll look good. And that is my whip number 3. It's my Manon jacket by Moreca Knits. Whip number 4. When I was in Queensland last week, I went to a knitting group at the Banana Bender in, where is it? I don't know, up there somewhere. At the Big Banana on the Sunshine Coast. And when I was there, I met another YouTuber, and her name is Mad About You, Maddie. And Maddie was running a Knitalong in 2025 called the Bougie Blanket Knitalong. And I'm making a bougie blanket, but I'm going to participate in that knit-along, but I won't be eligible for any prizes or anything, because I think that the rule is that project has to be cast on post January 1 or on January 1, 2025, and this blanket was already cast on in December. So I'm going to probably tag it on Ravelry, on Instagram rather, with the knit-along tags, but it won't be eligible for prizes. Anyway, I spoke to Maddie about it, and she was happy for that to happen. Now, this is I've been using this project as the project that I take with me when I go and knit socially, or when I go out and knit with other people, because it's really mindless and there's no risk of making a mistake and getting home and having to rip out all your work, which has happened to me many times if I take complicated knits out with me when I'm knitting in groups and knitting in public. So this is my Alpenglow blanket by Purl Soho that I'm making in the linen quill minis that I bought as a kit in order to make this design. Now, I was completely influenced by Lena on Just Another Knitting Pod, who also bought the Alpenglow kit and was going to make the Alpenglow blanket. And she started it. She really did not enjoy the process, and so she switched to a Stephen West pattern that also looks amazing. If you go to her channel and have a look at the progress on her blanket, it's absolutely beautiful. But she had more of the linen quill available to her because it's one of her favourite yarns, and she's in the US and she's got a lot of it, and she was saying, well, if I have to buy more, I will, and I don't really want to buy any more. I don't want to buy this kit again, so I have stuck with the Alpenglow blanket. But I kind of do know what she means. It is a little bit boring, and I think it is a good project to do when you're actually out in public, because you don't have to think about it. But I think that if I picked this up of a night when I was sitting watching the TV or sitting with my husband watching something on Netflix or whatever, I think that I would definitely have to have some other projects to work on as well to keep you occupied, because it does get a little bit dull with all this just knit. I have modified not the pattern, but I've modified the construction of this to avoid purling, which I'm finding is successful, except the way that I'm doing it. I'm not really going to share what I'm doing because I don't know that it's even any advantage. I'm doing it so I don't have to purl. If you don't want to purl and you're making an Alpenglow blanket, message me and I'll tell you what I'm doing. But what I'm doing is leaving a trail of destruction, if you like, a trail of ends down each side. This is the warm side and this is the cool side that I'm going to have to deal with. So I might not have to purl while I'm making this blanket, but when this blanket is finished, I'm going to have a very big problem with what I'm going to do with these ends. I said before, what I'm probably going to do is pick up around the hole outside and then knit a border that will be able to envelop them. That is going to be a lot of work. In the meantime though, that is a problem for future me, not present me, and present me is just really still absolutely in awe of how this pattern is designed. Are you ready? Have a look at side A. And you can see that I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm on my 6th stripe, of which there are 20. So I'm about a quarter of the way through, a bit more. This is the cool side. And when I flip it around, this is the hot side. It's still absolutely astounding to me that this result can be obtained by just plain garter stitch. It's brilliant, isn't it? I'll show you again. Side A, which is the cool side, and side B, or whatever, you know, which is the warm side, which is my favourite side. Absolutely loving it. The Alpenglow blanket made in linen quill from Purl Soho in their mini set. Now, related to what Lena was saying, one of the reasons she didn't like this knit was that she was saying that she wanted to use all her yarn, and when she made this there was quite a bit of leftover of each colour, and that's actually true. And I get what she's saying. She wanted to buy the kit and use it and not be left at the end with another set of scraps that she didn't know what she was going to do with. And I have got that as well. But what I'm doing is when I finish each colour, I'm taking my leftovers and I'm crocheting little crocheted squares. And they're just very, very, very simple double crocheted squares. And they're not all the same size, because interestingly I'm not getting exactly the same amount of yarn left over at the end of each stripe. I can't explain that, but that's what's happening. So you can see that I've got, you know, I've done 6 stripes, so I should have, I've finished 5 stripes, so I should have 10 of these, 10 colours. And here they all are. There's the, you know, there's all the greens, and there's that beautiful chartreuse colour, etc, etc. And they're all the hot ones. And I think what I'm going to do at the end is I'm going to get a shadow frame, and I'm going to glue these on a frame with on some nice archival paper or some nice art paper, and I'm going to see if I can make a kind of handmade crochet sort of artwork. I've seen some on Pinterest, and I think I'm going to give that a go. So that's what I'm doing to deal with my problem of having a bit of yarn left over at the end of each square. And now, when I'm finished my alpine blanket, I'll have 2 things. I'll have my alpine blanket finished, and I'll also have quite a few of these little crocheted higgledy-piggledy sort of random squares. So that's fun, I think. I'm looking forward to finding some. Have you noticed on YouTube that whenever anyone picks up a project that's got a strand of alpaca in it or a strand of mohair silk, that afterwards they're always picking the mohair out of their faces? I've noticed it. I do it too. Anyway, at the end of this, I'm going to have finished the Alpine Black. Oh, look, I'm doing it again. Jeez, could be my hair. I'm having a bad hair day today. Apologies for that. You have to look at it. I also have to look at it when I'm editing later. Good. Anyway, crocheted squares. I'm going to have crocheted squares to do something fun with when I'm finished my Alpenglow blanket in Purl and Soho. I'm going to Knitter's Guild tomorrow morning. I'm going to take this and finish this current stripe, which is a lovely bird's egg blue and a really, really bright orange. This is nowhere near as potato chip addictive as this. Nowhere near it. I could probably sit down and completely give myself permanent tendinosis, because I could probably sit down and make an entire Stella quilt cushion in one sitting. It's that fun. So that's it for new cast-ons and live whips that were brought forward from 2025. And the next couple of projects I'm going to show you are going to form part of my finish or fix 6 for 2025. And they are sitting here in a little pile next to me. I'm going to start with this guy. We haven't seen this one for a while, have you? This is the Joanna Ang Ribwave sweater that I started last year and abandoned because other projects caught my eye and I worked on those instead. I've finished knitting the front, the first front panel, and I've picked up along the shoulders and I'm starting to knit down. I started again because do you remember I got myself into a muddle and I'd lost track of which cable row I was on, and I'm knitting this in the most beautiful yarn. This is the Great Southern Yarn 100% Australian soft rolling skin merino, which is non-mulesed and non-super wash in the 5-ply sport weight in the colour Yukon Bean. Now, I have waxed lyrical about this yarn before, and so I won't do it again now. But if you don't have any of this and you are in the market for some merino yarn that is non-superwash, that is a sport weight or a DK weight, they probably do a fingering weight as well, I entreat you to do yourself a favour and buy some of this. It is unbelievably beautiful. Free plug for them, because it's not sponsored, and I paid for this yarn, and I would pay for it again in a heartbeat. So I'm going to, when I'm finished the Salty Days sweater, which probably shouldn't take too long, I'm going to then get this out again and start working on this as a live whip for 2025. Someone mentioned that one of the YouTubers was doing a Fix It February but I'm not sure about whether my timing is going to be realistic for me to actually finish this in February. We're halfway through January now. They're all on the needles. This is also on the needles. I don't think I'm going to commit to finishing it in February, but I definitely am going to. This is going to be live next time we talk. The next fix it or the next finish it object that I'm going to work on in 2025 is this guy here. Again, you haven't seen it for a while. I'm going to quickly show it because it's had zero progress since last time I showed you. But this is the Tove Dress that I am not sure if I'm going to make into a dress, but I'm going to make it into a top, and then I'm going to decide at that point whether to make it longer or not. It's a crochet pattern that is very ornate, and it's a very fitted item, and I really do like it. I wasn't sure about the colour, but it has actually grown on me, and I do think that I will actually wear this, particularly in the evenings because it is a silvery dark colour. So I am going to get that back on the hook at some point, and it'll probably be after the Ribwave. This is, I think I'll get this out towards winter. And last but not least, the other UFO that I want to finish in 2025, and that'll be 3 of my finish projects of my plan to finish or fix 6, is this, which again, I shared this I think in my very first episode, and I've got lots of new people here. Well, I say lots, I've got some new people here who may not have seen it, so I'll show it again. It's really a gorgeous knit, and I was really enjoying it. I don't know why I put it down, because I put it down in like 2022 maybe, or certainly very early in 2023, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have just kept plugging away and finishing it. I think one of the reasons is that it's absolutely huge, and there's a lot of lace knitting in it that's quite complicated. You have to really look at the chart, and because there's so many stitches on the needle, it's actually takes a really long time to get across one row, and I've still got a fair few rows to go before I start decreasing. It's a crescent shaped, or possibly an asymmetrical triangle shaped wrap, and it's knitted in a fade. I'm going to hold it up so that you can see the motifs, that the show-stopping ones. It starts at a point and you increase up on the in the first colour, and the first pattern is just a really simple shell sort of feather and fan type lace that changes a little bit as you enter into the second colour, into a slightly different feather pattern, and then when you get to the next colour change, it bursts into these really beautiful bunches of flower motifs that I will just come up close and show you one of them. Can you see those pink bunches of flowers? I'll show you another one down there. There's one, there's a good one, that looks good. There you go, you can see it. They are so fun, and I think this has got a real show-stopping kind of ornate look about it. I really like it. It reminds me of those filigree fences and gates that you sometimes see out there in the world, and I really want to finish this. I won't get that much wear out of it, I'll tell you that straight up, because I'm not a wrap wearer, I'm not a shawl wearer, but I really do love knitting lace, and so this is a real process knit for me, not so much product knit. That's not to say I don't like it, I really like looking at it, but I'm unlikely to wear this. So this is very likely to become a gift, and I think I know who I'm going to give it to. It's a friend of mine who, I've given her a few wraps before and she likes them, and she's very appreciative. I hardly ever see her, but anyway, I think I'm going to give it to her. Either that or my mum, and we'll see. I've got to finish it first, right? Before I can bestow it upon a lucky recipient. But there it is. This is the Bloom Your Heart Out shawl by someone or other, and I originally was going to buy the kit from the La Bien Ami website for this knit. I don't think it's available anymore because I think since then they've moved on. This was quite a few years ago. They've moved on and they have other designs and other kits. They still do use this designer though, and she does design some really beautiful, feminine, pretty shawls that are very on brand for this kind of thing. What else can I say about this? going to finish it in 2025, really. That's all I want to say about it. It's lovely. And that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That was 7 projects that I've shared with you today that are my current live whips and my next in line whips. And that should pretty much take me through to winter of 2025. I reckon that'll, well, I say winter, obviously I'm Australian, you can hear that, right? So I'm in the southern hemisphere and my winter starts in about July. And by that time, there will be lots of snuggly, cosy sweaters and cardigans to be knitted in the winter months. So now I'm going to share with you my one acquisition, which is not yarn, but it is knitting related. And then I'll share with you the weird coincidence, and after that, I'm going to let you go. So I bought this planner from a company called, I think they're called a creator's friend or something. I'll link it in the notes. Anyway, if you go to the link, you'll be able to see what they make. They make planners and build your own little products where you buy the folder in whatever colour, you buy your inserts depending on what you're interested in. Anyway, they talk about their designs as being suitable for people with ADHD, and I feel like I'm a self-diagnosed ADHD person, so I bought one of their sort of bundles. They're really good. This is really cute. It's called the Fast Brain Friend, an 85 daily productivity planner. Well, in the hope that that might make me more productive, I bought one of those. But more importantly, they have this, and this is called the Textiles Friend. And in it is a hobby note book. And it's set out for textiles people, right? Calling the Textiles Friend. And on the top it says not weave, sew, crochet, knit or embroider. And it just sort of gives a page where you can put your project and some details about your project, and then on the right hand side it's got some, you know, grids and whatever to keep notes. But I just really kind of, you know, I think everybody really loves stationery and little things like this, don't they? I just find this really quite exciting. I love carrying it around. I think it's a beautiful colour and I am using it. So I've been entering my projects into my little Textiles Friend hobby notebook, and I reckon it was really fun. It was a really good little buy. I don't think it's particularly well designed for a knitting project, but you can still make it work, and I'm really enjoying it. I think it's fun. I like it. So that's my Creator's Friend organizer planner bundle that I bought because basically it was suggested to me on Instagram. Anyway, I've got one more weird thing to show you. For those of you who watch AKA Nora Knits, which I'm sure it's a lot of you, you might have noticed on Saturday she talked about how behind her was a shadow box. I'm not even really sure what that is. But in that shadow box throughout the year, whenever she opened a ball of yarn, she kept the ball band, and she tossed it in the shadow box, and she thought that at the end of the year she might be able to make something that sort of looked good and was a bit cool and a bit arty. Well, I laughed when I saw that because I did the same thing. I had this plastic box underneath this desk here, and every time I opened a ball of yarn or a skein of yarn in 2024, I kept the ball band. And then when I was doing my Everything I Knit in 2024 video, I got them out. And I looked at this pile of ball bands and I thought to myself, what am I going to do with that? It doesn't look cool, and I don't think I could find anything to do with them. And I was reading in Nora's comments on the post that, you know, on her podcast last week, and someone said that they'd made like a paper chain with them and sort of strung it up in the studio. And I really liked the idea of that, but I just don't think I'm going to be able to do that and make it look any good. But there you go. There's a pile of every ball band I opened in 2024. What am I going to do with that? It's just funny. I commented on the post and she commented back and said maybe we could work out what we're going to do with it. I go, well, maybe we can, but I really don't know. Any suggestions? Chuck it out, probably. Stick it in your little textiles friend book. Anyway, there are like 137 yarn ball bands in this pile. Strange. I didn't use 137 skeins of yarn. Some of them I put on the pegboard for display purposes, and some of them, I don't know. I didn't use that many, I don't think. Anyway, so that's my funny coincidence. Nora kept all her ball bands in 2024, and so did I. So, that's it for today. That's all I've got for you. If you are still watching, congratulations. Thank you very much for sticking to the end. Please subscribe and ring the bell if you haven't already done so if you like this video. And I will see you next time. Bye.
Sounds like a good place to start. Your feeling seems to be left.